Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and this is Should Have Listened to My Mother. Here we are in Season 5 of Should Have Listened to My Mother. Our audience is growing weekly in large part due to word of mouth, and I have you to thank for that. Thank you for spreading the word, and you can listen anywhere and everywhere you find podcasts, including YouTube and Apple Podcasts, and it would be great if you could leave us a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It's quick and easy. For those who are listening for the first time, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on board. Should Have Listened to My Mother is a melting pot of stories of women from all around the world who happen to take on the monumental title of mom or mother or mama or ma. To some women, motherhood comes naturally. To others, it's more of a struggle. We recently republished an episode from Season 2. David Thomas was my guest. He's a phenomenal CEO and presentation skills coach, Guinness record breaker, and Sunday Times bestselling author. And he emailed me and said, "Thank you, Jackie, and keep doing the podcast. It genuinely changes people's lives." David's mother suffered from addiction issues and was an abusive mom. David is responsible for changing and shaping his own life. Yes, it was difficult, but it was going to be his future. And all of these experiences, whether positive or negative, offer valuable lessons to help us navigate our own lives. Should Have Listened to My Mother is simply a tool for learning and understanding. These conversations of shared experiences and hindsight are important to talk about openly, and hopefully we can learn from these stories from around the world. Speaking of stories from around the world, my guest, Costas Schuler, is joining us from the Fort Lauderdale, Florida area. He was born in Athens, Greece, to a Greek mother and British father. His parents met and married while in Australia. Costas has wonderful childhood memories of spending time with his grandparents in both Greece on the Mediterranean and in Cambridge, England. He and his family emigrated to the U.S. in 1985. Costas Schuler is the founder and creative director of Envisionary Design. He's a marketing and branding specialist. He's also known as the pen guy, and he says, "I love my mom, and I have lots to share about my Greek mom." He believes in intuition, loves taking naps, and gets inspired. His advice, don't quit. There's always something good just around the corner. Hello, Costas, and welcome to Should Have Listened to My Mother.
Hi, how are you today? Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
And Kalimera. That's all. I got to throw that little bit of Greek out there.
More to come if you want to stay tuned.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Your mom obviously means a lot to you. You reached out to me and said you wanted to share your story. And I sometimes ask my guests, are you who you are today because of or in spite of your mother?
Yes. I mean, if there was one part of I joke with people. I said if it wasn't for mom, I would have done a lot more drugs. Meaning like I didn't do a lot of drugs because I knew if she'd find out, she'd kill me. So that the thought of her, the hurt of her finding out kept me on the straight and narrow.
Wow, that's pretty great. Was it your parents' relationship good cop, bad cop, or you were just more intimidated by your mom?
Yes. Mom's was the bad cop, dad was the good cop. Definitely.
Interesting. So they had a pretty adventurous life, traveling from Hong Kong before you were born all the way by land, I believe, to Athens, back to Athens, where your mom originates from.
Yes.
What are some of your childhood memories of you and your mom when you were a little boy? Is there something that stands out, whether it's cooking or being outside in the environment? What is a instinctual thing that says Greece and my childhood to me?
Well, we lived in the suburbs of Athens, but every summer we made our way to the island of Ikaria, which is where my mom is from. It's considered a blue zone. It's the story of Icarus, where he flew too close to the sun. He fell. They named an island after him. That's how that works over there. So every summer we'd take the 11-hour gut-wrenching ferry ride over to the island. God, I mean, now it's 3 hours, but back then it was like,
A day.
puking your guts out all the way there. And and then we'd take a taxi drive all the way up to the mountain of where my mom's from, a small island. I mean, small village up in there. And so it was, she ended up building a summer home just, 500 yards from where she was born. And so it's a forest and back there, pine forest. There was goats, there was mules and gardening and all those things back then. So, I mean, in the 70s, for a while, there wasn't any power up to that part of the village. And I remember, playing by oil lamp, at night or and things like that. So very rural. My uncle was there. My grandma was there. So that was actually the best memories. Is actually going to the island every summer. And this is a house traditionally built because there's a lot of granite in the area. Mm-hmm. The homes there, the traditional homes were built with granite rock, kind of piled up on each other and making I would say 2 foot thick walls. That was traditional thickness and made. So the house it looked modern, but it was built in a traditional way. I mean, you can't make a house like that anymore. There's no way. Most people build them with cinder block and brick, but that was an amazing build.
Authentic, yeah. And is it still in the family or no?
It's still in the family.
Wow.
It still has the furniture that we had when I was a kid in Athens. I mean, I look at pictures. I mean, it's just like I was, everything is the same. They built it out a little bit more, but all the same furniture, the same, which is crazy to me.
Which is crazy, but it's also really neat.
Yeah.
You can envision it wherever you are. You know exactly what it looks like. In spending that time during the summer, especially with your mom, was she the one that wanted you to entertain yourself, or were you busy with her in the kitchen, or she just said, go entertain yourself?
Yes. I mean, I'm Generation X, kids were sent out and required to come back home when mom yelled or it got dark. So out of the house. As much as possible, like wild feral animals. We would, all the kids were there. We'd play for hours and hours. We'd play we'd have pine cone wars in the back, in the mountain behind the house. Just hours, hiking around, going in rivers and just getting into trouble. I remember one time I actually had this thing where I was actually collecting scorpions. So I had a method of collecting scorpions out in the field. And we did that. And nobody got bit,
Interesting. I believe you have some kids. Would you let them play with scorpions today?
No, I mean, that's fine.
That's fine?
It's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, just do it right. You don't get bit. There's a method. I have a method. So my method is foolproof. Never got bit. So
there you go. We'll stick with that one. Maybe you'll share that with us later. So your mom, did she cook? Was she a musician?
Yeah.
Was she an artist? What was she passionate about?
She was, I mean, she's a farmer. She grew up in the land. She basically grew up on the land and in the land. I mean, even to this day, I mean, you'll find my mom, for the most part, most of her life out in the garden. She was growing gardens. I mean, she was notorious. She would come to our house, plant a garden and leave. I mean, she was a drive-by gardener. Just as long as I've known her, she's out in the yard, digging and scraping and preparing and moving the dirt and planting all kinds of plants that we had to take care of. And it just, that was the thing. And she's into herbs too. I mean, my goodness, herbs. I mean, she knew how to make tinctures. She knew how to make, St. John's wort. She knew, she would go to Greece, go to the mountain, collect wild oregano, dry it, and then bag it into, pillowcases, and then bring it to America and through the airports. That was her thing,
She's my kind of gal. Not the, hiding herbs and things, but I love all that. That's wonderful because it's right from the earth. There's nothing toxic in it, and it's all natural. So
it's the good stuff. It's the good stuff. Trust me, she will argue with you there's no oregano anywhere on the planet that's any good to her, except for the stuff that's coming off the mountain.
Yeah,
So,
and rosemary. I think was there. I've been to Greece a few times. But
rosemary, yeah,
or is it oregano? Just oregano. Oh,
I
that's
want to say I
amazing.
don't know the names, but yeah, if I smell it, I'll tell you if it's there. If it's there.
So I've neglected to ask you your mom's name. So please tell us, because I
Well,
love
my
her
mom's
name.
name is Lemonia, which literally translates to English lemon tree. And so most people call her Lemon.
And you seem surprised why she loves the earth so much.
Oh, I mean,
She's named after a tree,
a
right?
tree, yeah. So she had 7 brothers and sisters. It was rough because she grew up in during the Second World War when she was young. The Italians were bombing the island, and so there was actually this giant rock. It looked like a big, like egg-shaped rock behind the house. And they used to hide underneath that rock, and it's still there. Like I used to spend my time just sitting on it when I was younger. So
Wow.
that offered some protection when the Italians were bombing
That
the
was their
island.
shelter, their
Yeah,
hide in place.
yeah.
Wow.
Um,
So tell me more. I'm interested in her upbringing. 7 children, your grandparents. You obviously got to know them.
yeah. Um, the, the, so the interesting story with my grandparents were they were both like they were both from opposing families. It was almost like the two families hated each other, but they ended up eloping together. So the funny story about that is that the one family would steal the goats from the other family in the daytime, in the morning, and then by the end of the day, the other family would steal them back. So
This
that's
is
the
your
funny.
maternal. This is your maternal
Yeah, that's right.
grandparents.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, so there's so many, like we grew up listening to the same stories over and over again, but they're always funny. I mean,
Can you
um,
share one with us, other than the
um,
stealing of the goat, which I love?
oh God, there was some rough ones too. I
Oh.
mean, it was, I mean, thank God. I mean, it was, I actually, I'm hesitant to say some of those things because it was a rough life. So, like, the discipline was harsh. I mean, some of the things that my grandfather had to deal with was, I mean, there was a story, because there's a story, and I don't know if it was my grandfather or not, but there's a story that said, so this is how rough it was. A parent would bring the student to the teacher, my grandparents' generation. So the parent would bring the student to the teacher, and the way was they would say, "You can keep the skin, but leave me the bones."
Oh
Meaning,
dear.
you can discipline this kid as much as you want, all the way to the bone, but let me have the bones.
Right.
And so,
Thank
I mean,
goodness times have changed.
I mean, that's rough, man. I mean, it was rough. I mean, you're up on the mountain, very rural, very backwards, so there was, so it wasn't easy. I mean, okay, another funny story was, I mean, they were hungry, right? So the beds were made out of corn husk, and they made a lot of noise when you rustled around, right? So in order for my mom to eat the apple that she had found somewhere, so she would rustle in the bed as she was eating the apple, so the noise of the husk, the dry husk, would cover the sound of her eating the apple in the middle of the night. So it's kind of
Wow.
it's kind of funny, but that's kind of, I mean, this, stories like that, weird neighbors and just interesting stuff like that.
But it's made her who she is today, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
has rubbed off on you too. In part, it has to, for better or worse.
yeah. I mean, it's like there was I think all the parents back in the 70s were like rough. It's rougher time, I think. So I mean, I think Generation X was feral. I mean, wild animals out, playing until the wee hours of, until night, coming back and, drinking from the hose and, we're falling off our bikes and doing crazy things. And so, like, it was okay, like nobody died from that. It was part of the process.
Right. We were allowed to be kids. We had that
We're
freedom.
allowed to be
But
kids,
your mom and her siblings had responsibility, right, to
Yeah,
help the family and put food on the
yeah,
table and
yeah.
and just makes you realize how fortunate we have and how much we have.
And actually, so that was part of the draw to move to Australia, because back in the 60s, Australia was booming, and so they were, having just importing people to come and work in the factories. So Australia was booming, so they needed workers, and they would educate you. There was like a 3 to 6 months, time where they were learning English, they were getting trained, and then they were getting paid to the air flight to come over to Australia. So her sister and her brother and her, three of them, the three oldest kids, moved to Australia like that.
This was in the 70s, correct?
Well, no, 60s.
Oh, 60s. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a large Greek population in one of the largest Greek population outside of Greece exists in Australia. Adelaide, Port Lincoln, Sydney, Adelaide, all those places. So I got a lot of relatives I've never even met, but there's a large, huge. So that's why she met my dad. So my dad went there with his parents, and he was going to college there. And so typical, he started hanging around with the Greek people, going to the festivals and things like that. And he met my mom there. And she told me that he was the cleanest hippie of the bunch. So she liked him.
Does she still feel that way?
There's some arguments about, there's some discrepancy or disagreements about things, but they're still together. They drive each other nuts.
I get it.
I won't sugarcoat that, but that's all I want to say about that.
That's fine. We're here to talk about your mom and you. You have a ton of respect for your mom and how she raised you. Are you instilling any of these same ideas and methodologies in raising your own children?
Yeah, I think the idea of resilience and self-reliance is something that I do my best to instill in my kids. I mean, my kids love to play video games and online and things like that. We homeschool our kids, but there's a sense like, here, let me show you how this works. Or if I'm doing something, like I've had my kids help me with fixing the car, and if something I'm doing around the house that needs to be done, I'll invite one of the kids to show me, here's how it works. This is how you fix this or do that. This is how you if something's not working, this is how you jiggle the knob when the toilet's
right, still running.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So this is what you do. You open it up. This is the plug and this and that. So and another thing is, I had my first job was in 6th grade. I used to walk to the grocery store, and I'd pick a line, and I would bag groceries for tips. We didn't have a lot of money. There was periods where money was tight. So the idea of like, hey, if you need some money, you need go work for it.
Yeah, so what a concept! Isn't that amazing?
My kids have jobs. Like I don't buy all this stuff for my kids. If they want something, both my daughters have jobs. Like one of them works at a coffee shop, one of them works at the local grocery store.
Mm-hmm. How old are they? In their teens or younger?
One of them is 26, and the other one is 16.
Great, good for you. It's a wonderful lesson. As long as they can get everything else done, right? But if you want something, you have to want it enough. You got to go earn it.
Yes. So that the work ethic came from mom.
All right.
And dad, of course.
What about love and affection? Was that not her forte, or was it, rub some dirt in it?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, no, mom was affectionate. She's very affectionate. Because I have a brother, but in the first 7 years, I was her only son. So she was affectionate. I drove her nuts sometimes, but the hugs and kisses, that is very, very Greek, very culturally Greek. She had that. So. I hug and kiss all my kids, even my son. We were very affectionate. So that's a Greek thing, but she instilled that. Now my dad, English, not so much. Different.
Yeah, it's like oil and water.
Oh my God.
Greek olive oil.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Greek people are like, come over, stay as long as you like, visit. English people are like, in half an hour you have to leave.
Oh my gosh.
So you got to make an appointment first. It's very different. So there were some arguments about that. I mean, dad actually chased some people out, and mom didn't like that. Oh my goodness.
But it has certainly instilled some wonderful characteristics in you, especially that you've learned from the jobs that you've had. And I know that you had jobs that you got fired from, and yet you're still in touch with the guy who fired you. And
Yeah.
you've learned to keep going and persevere, especially because you're a business owner. So there's these wonderful characteristics that it seems like you did gather from your mom.
I took my lumps as a kid, but so I wasn't a very popular kid in school because my mom had this thing. She kept moving different neighborhoods. She moved me like different schools. Like it seemed like every year I was in a different school. So
this is in California.
No, this is in Greece. So when I was
Okay.
a kid, so she kept moving neighborhoods, kept moving. So I was always the new kid on the block. So I didn't have enough time to kind of be a part of the neighborhood. So where was I going with that? So that sort of made me independent, more resilient, but it actually gave me more compassion for people that didn't fit in. Like I don't like it when I see somebody getting picked on. That really, really like fires me up. That makes me angry. Like when I see somebody not being treated well, it really, really upsets me. So
I'm here on that one. I'm with you on that one.
I will throw my body on the line if I have to. If I see something, I will literally like throw my body in there and try to do something.
Did your mom
what I mean?
do that for you? Would she ever intervene?
Yes, she had this thing where she didn't like me to get into fights. So not only did I get into fights and sometimes lose or win or lose, but I'd come home and she'd get really mad at me for getting into a fight because I think what happened is because she grew up in such violent times, the war and the depression, and there's a lot of things going on. They were like eating bark and acorns and
to survive, anything to survive.
So she was very protective of me getting into her. So I guess I get that same sort of ferocity from her. So yes, she was very, very protective.
Yeah,
I'm her son. She had
you're her first son.
That's right.
Who she had, and you're her favorite. I'm sure she had you for 7 years. But
neither
my
deny
husband.
nor confirm that.
Okay, I'm going to call her right now. No.
If my brother's watching, I don't know.
So, my husband always says he studied martial arts, and he says, the second you throw the first punch, you've already lost. It's not good. So she would, but
I took martial arts, actually. That's actually a very interesting thing. I took martial arts, and the best, if you can avoid the fight, that's the best.
Yeah.
If you can see ahead and see what's coming, if it's in your power to not end up in front of the other person, that's a good deal.
That's the win right there. Yeah. We were talking about you starting your own businesses and being fired and things like that when you were younger and learning from those experiences. And it's helped you become who you are today professionally. You're a marketing and a branding guy. You're known as the pen guy, which was huge a couple of years ago. You had your Mercedes-Benz covered with pens and people knew who you were, and it was just this phenomenon that blew up and was amazing for you. But you still want to encourage people to try things because fear can really hold people back. It gets in the way because they're afraid of failure. It's a huge lesson. We can change. We can just say, fear, get out of my way, right? Tell me a little bit about how you've overcome obstacles in your career.
Oh, I mean,
you have so many.
the biggest takeaway is not to quit. That's the biggest thing. Just to keep going, because when I've been in a dark spot in life, the saying that says this too shall pass. It's true. It's 100% true. This too shall pass. I mean, worst case scenario, you die. Okay, so it's fine. But this too shall pass. It doesn't last forever. So if you can hang in there and just keep moving forward, there's a way out. Like I saw this thing recently where they're talking about buffaloes, and the buffaloes instinctively, when there's a storm, they instinctively walk into the storm. because they know that it's the fastest way out. Rather than trying to avoid the storm, it's going to last a lot longer. So avoiding the storms in your life, it lasts longer. If you just lean into it, it's actually the shortest distance out.
That's really wonderful. Face it, face on, right? Just
Yeah,
walk
yeah.
right toward
It's
it.
not easy though.
It's not easy, but we all, whether we're self-employed or not, we all have these obstacles in our life.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what life is. And in the grand scheme of things, when you're in the middle of it, it's horrible and horrific, and it seems like that cloud is never going to go away.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's really a moment in time when you think of your livelihood. So, tell me a little bit about Envisionary Design. Or tell us, share with my audience, my listeners.
Okay, so I've been doing graphic design for the last 30 years, and so I started Envision Design when I was let go. I was working at a print shop, which I learned a lot. Thank you, Larry. And I wasn't very good at organizational stuff. Like I was good at creative stuff, but like organizing jobs and blah 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 was not my forte. So he let me go. But then I started my business the next day. I was on my way I had a little business card job. Literally the next day on Saturday, I was rushing to get there. I got a traffic ticket just for fun. Welcome to your business. And so I just started going out and, just talking to people. And so that was like 17 years ago. And up until then, I'd worked for different companies and learned a lot of different things. Worked for creative agencies. I worked for Ernst & Young for a little bit. I worked with some incredible mentors. So yeah, I mean, I started doing logos and anything that's printed, design, marketing, all those things. And then I started doing websites, WordPress sites. And now here in Florida, I have some really cool clients that keep me really busy. And so basically my whole thing is helping, my niche is helping CMOs or marketing managers, people in marketing, fulfill their creatives. Like, so somebody, a CMO or a marketing person, they have like a campaign that they want to launch, some sort of project. I come alongside it and do my best to make their job easy by creating all the assets. If I have to, work with the printers, I'll do that because I know how to deal with them. And just, they never have to worry about me. So everything ends up on time at their doorstep when they need it for their campaign.
But it's key what you were just saying, because you have worked in printing and all of these different aspects of design. If a design is going to print well or not, just by knowing all that. So I say to my two boys all the time, just try something. It's never a waste of time. It's valuable experience, and you're going to use it down the line one way, shape, or form. So it only makes you better the more well-rounded you are.
Yeah, and I have to give credit to Dad because he was an engineer, so he always had some sort of project he was working on. So I got that from him, like that ability to, I taught myself how to weld. I welded for 7 years.
I want to learn how to weld.
I know how to fix diesel cars. I know how to fix appliances. I'm very curious type. Like if something's not working, I'm like, I'll get in there, and I want to know how it works. So this business I've been in, there's been so many, new things have come out now. We got AI, and that's fascinating to me. I just recently discovered TikTok, and I'm figure out how to make videos that have the hook and all those things, and how to I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by the live things that people are doing on TikTok.
Yeah, every day it's new, something new.
It's almost I'm shocked. There's some
crazy
weird
stuff
on there.
Yeah, it could be daunting too, because it's kind of like you spread yourself out really thin. But I want to thank you because I know that it meant a lot for you to share these stories of Lamonia. And will you please say hello to her from all of us?
Hello. Oh yes, I will. Yes, but I got to tell you one last thing. As you're introing me, this is kind of, I've never talked about my mom at this level with anybody. Mm-hmm. So this is the first time I've talked to anybody publicly about mom. So as you're introducing me, I felt emotion. The emotion was I don't know why. It's just very weird. I actually feel it right now, the welling up of emotion in my body. So it's an interesting, response to talking about my mom in this format. So something to look into for myself.
It's just amazing. I mean, just to get an email from David, who was on my show 3 years ago, saying, you have no idea how this thing is changing people's lives. But I so appreciate people opening up and sharing these stories, and whether they can really fully be honest and open with me is one thing, because then sometimes I hear a fuller story once we're, stop recording.
Yeah.
But it's a beginning, and people start to really go inside and either release themselves of something or embrace the true value of what the experience was. So thank you for being really open with me.
Welcome. As open as I could.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I held back.
I know. And I totally respect that, because
if it got back to Mom, I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Costas, Schuler, thank you so much for joining me on Should Have Listened to My Mother.
Very, very welcome. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.